What is up, Only Playbook fans? We are back for another episode. We are previewing week 5 here, episode 76. One of the worst football games of the season already transpired last night. We'll probably talk a lot about it, even though there's not a lot of great things to want to highlight. Russell Wilson probably being the primary topic and focus of that conversation. I'm Sweetcar. I got Shobit with me. Shashot is doing doctor things today, so it is just the two of us. How's it going, Shobit? Happy Friday.
Hey, happy Friday. Week 5 is coming up, and believe it or not, it's the last week before bye week start. So if you haven't already started to look at your lineup moving forward, like there's some key guys that are out: Derrick Henry, Devontae Adams, TJ Hockenson, Darren Waller. So start looking at that if you haven't already.
Yeah, there's some big juggernaut bye weeks. I think like bye 9 or week 9, maybe week 7, 13 or something like that. There's a couple of weeks that are just kind of juggernauts in terms of a lot of teams are on bye. So you're going to have to basically have a lot of roster spots to fill. And that's where it gets tricky, right? Who you can drop, who you can't drop. So you kind of have to pre-plan ahead, like you said, knowing that bye weeks are coming, and you can't necessarily be in a situation where you're not starting somebody because you can't drop Derrick Henry or you can't drop Devontae Adams. So definitely some maneuverability that is needing to be focused on during bye season. But without further ado, Shobit, let's kick things off with water cooler talk. Thursday Night Football last night was one of the ugliest games of the season, already probably a contender for worst games of the season. Broncos and Colts traveling to Denver to take on the Denver Broncos here. Broncos at home favored by 3.5 points. Colts cover this and win the game outright in ugly fashion. 12-9 final. Under 42 was the lock of the century. Colts cover the 3.5 point spread. Colts come into this game and now are 2-1. Denver drops to 2-3. I mean, not again, kickers. If you had kickers in fantasy, or if you had the defenses in fantasy, you're probably pretty happy. Melvin Gordon ends up putting up a respectable stat line, 15 carries, 54 yards, did catch 3 passes for 49 yards. Other than that, man, I mean, Cam Sutton, or Cortland Sutton, 5 for 74. Russell Wilson and Matt Ryan were abysmal. I mean, Matt Ryan, 251 yards through the air, 2 interceptions, no touchdowns, 6 sacks, 2 fumbles. Russ, not much better, 274 through the air, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 4 sacks, 1 fumble. So it was not a quarterback show at all. Nyheim Hines, who was supposed to get the start in one of his, first starts of his career with Jonathan Taylor out, unfortunate, one of the first plays of the game. I mean, he gets absolutely decked, and, another visible primetime concussion that just was absolutely terrifying, scary. He could not walk. Thank God they didn't put him back in the game, but just really unfortunate that back-to-back primetime weeks on Thursday night, I think, and we're seeing really scary concussion injuries. I don't know if there's an added emphasis to concussions, if something is going on where, players are getting hit in the head a little bit more this year than not, but I don't know. It's just, I don't remember seeing this as, I guess as frequently as we saw the past 2 weeks.
And the fact that like getting hit in the head is making the players wobbly like that in the field. I've never seen that before, and twice this year that we're seeing it. It's definitely scary, but they're not taking any chances. Like Nyheim, we knew he was out after that happened.
Yeah, I mean, after the whole shit show with the Dolphins and Tua, every franchise, every organization is going to err on the side of caution there. So really sad to see for Hines. Deion Jackson and Phillip Lindsay were kind of the running backs that took his place. Deion Jackson had a nice night, 13 carries, 62 yards, 4 catches, 29 yards. Lindsay, who they just picked up in a revenge game against the Broncos, who was his former team, 11 carries, 40 yards, caught 3 balls for 14 yards. So it seems like in Jonathan Taylor's absence, now with Hines out, it's going to be more of a split back situation. They both had kind of spurts where they looked good and then spurts where they didn't look as good. But the offenses just could not get anything going. I mean, Matt Ryan could not get protected. The Broncos defense was really, really good all over the place. And Colts run defense was good, but I'd say more so than anything, the Broncos offense was the reason that they couldn't score versus the Colts defense being otherworldly. Russell Wilson, 2 key interceptions in the red zone, very uncharacteristic of Russ. But what do you make of the situation in Denver? I mean, it's been 5 weeks now. We talk about kind of give us 4 weeks to really evaluate teams, players, things like that. 5 weeks now where the Broncos offense has looked, just absolutely abysmal.
Yeah, it looks really bad. I think all blame should go on Russell Wilson, to be honest. I mean, yeah, Nathaniel Hackett is not proven to be the greatest coach, and it is his first year, but he's just not accurate, and he doesn't look poised in the pocket. So the throws that are behind the receivers and not getting the open reads, like for example, that last play of the game, right, for the Broncos. KJ Hamler is wide open. He's just looking straight left at Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, not looking at the I think it's the drag that's coming across the field, and that's an easy touchdown if he just looks that way. And so yeah, all blame on Russell Wilson for me. I think he's just got to step up and play better for this offense to be efficient.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the one thing that Russell's always been known for is his accuracy, and like he didn't look accurate last night. He doesn't look comfortable at all, and he looks very vanilla. Like I can't tell if he just has hit a wall, if his thumb is, or whatever, his finger injury that he had last year is really still hindering him that, we just don't know about, or if he's got the bag and he's just not as interested, like it could be anything. And I hate to, the latter seems to be like the most, jumping to a narrative as it could be. But I mean, again, for him, did you watch his press conference afterwards?
No. Well, how did that go?
I mean, he was, just kind of talking about how he has to be better, everything, all this and that, and this and the other. And he still ends the press conference with Broncos country. Let's ride. And I'm like, bro, there is a time and place, and you shat the bed. I don't think Broncos country wants to ride anywhere with you. They may want to ride you to the dumpster because you're playing like dog shit. So I don't know, like just be more situationally aware, know that you're now 2-3, like know that you haven't played well at all. This offense has not looked good in any facet, right? Any facet at all. And so, yes, Nathaniel Hackett's in his first year as a head coach. He's calling the plays. He's coming from an offensive coordinator mindset. Yes, Russell Wilson's in a new system, but you got a perennial Hall of Fame quarterback who still is, or should be, at least in his prime, or being able to at least play above average football. And it's nothing but, I mean, it's everything beyond that. It's just below average. Like you said, he's not making his reads well. He's inaccurate. He doesn't seem focused. The way he utilizes his legs seems to more so be like, it's the last resort more so than this is something that I can complement if the passing game's not there. Like, let me use my legs. Let me put some pressure on the defense. And so that's not necessarily there as much. And it's everything is kind of being what am I trying to say? Like, is all of like a
chain effect.
Yes, a chain effect of Russell Wilson not playing well, right? Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, just the inaccuracy, the chemistry is not there with the receivers, the run game's not there as well. And so it's just been awful. And luckily, the Colts offense is so bad. Matt Ryan is so old. He cannot move at all when the pocket collapses, that defense for Denver kept the offense in the game. And still that was not enough, right? Still the Colts come away victorious. So as the Denver Broncos, 5 weeks in, you have to look yourself in the mirror and be like, what is the identity? This cannot be who this team is. They did not just pay $250 million for a quarterback to look this bad. I mean, it's just not acceptable. A lot of fingers are being pointed, and 5 weeks in, for a third receiver on your team to take his helmet off and slam it on the ground in the field of play, like right as the play transpires. I mean, that's a big red flag, and that's something that could come back to haunt them in the locker room. So what's going on behind the scenes? Who needs to answer for this, for how bad they've been? I mean, again, a lot of fingers to be pointed, and for Broncos fans, for football fans as a whole, we're sick and tired of seeing Denver on primetime. They play again on primetime next week against the Chargers on Monday night. Like, change your shit up, Denver. Otherwise, again, football ratings are going to go down big time.
Yeah, it was great. It was crazy because it's 9-9, right? It's 9-9. They're going to overtime, and the fans have had it. Like, there's still a chance for the Broncos.
People are leaving the game during a tie game at home.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a telling of how bad this team has been to watch. It's atrocious. So, yeah, definitely step it up, Russ. Start cooking.
It's just crazy to me because in my head, I'm still thinking like they played so bad, but still won the game. But no, like the fact of the matter is they played that bad, and the Colts ended up stealing this game. And so for some reason, that result is not sticking with me. And that needs to be a bigger point of emphasis, that the Broncos have to figure their shit out. I mean, absolutely. Their defense is good, but their offense is abysmal. One guy I really want to highlight, obviously on the Colts, Alec Pierce had a really nice night. Being that number 2 receiver, caught a lot of important passes on third down, moving the chains, etc. Did have a fumble, but luckily his own team recovered that. But for Michael Pittman not having the best game, and he's supposed to be their true number one. Pierce, as a rookie receiver, has stepped in nicely, at least this week and the past week or so, to warrant some maybe fantasy pickup or fantasy implications to stash on your bench. But nonetheless, Colts win this game in Denver on the road, 12-9, cover the 3.5-point dog spread under 42 cashes. Again, Broncos now 2-3 in that tough division. Colts somehow, some way are 2-1, playing some of the worst football I've seen. Let's jump into waivers and free agent pickups for this week. Names I'm going to run through really quickly. Shovit, stop me if you've heard them before, or if there's anybody you want to add, feel free to let me know. Quarterbacks this week, I'm looking at Jared Goff has started off the season really nice. Bad matchup this week, but last week with a favorable matchup with basically none of his offensive players being there, he still put up really, really nice fantasy numbers. Patriots are a better defense. It's a tough matchup, but there are a lot of quarterbacks like the Russell Wilsons who I started, like players that, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, those guys who you've started and haven't been good for you. And so you're thinking about deploying guys on the waiver wire. Jared Goff's not a terrible replacement here this week. Geno Smith, another quarterback. He's playing against the Saints. He's only 25% rostered. He's thrown up 20+ points in 3 of his last 4 games. I would have gladly taken that over Russ last night. So that's another guy that you may be looking at filling in. Ryan Tannehill at the Commanders. Commanders are 27th against opposing quarterbacks. So that's a nice spot there. Andy Dalton for the Saints against the Seahawks. Seahawks are 25th against opposing quarterbacks. Even Bailey Zappi, who is now slotted to start as quarterback with Mac Jones officially listed as doubtful and Brian Hoyer concussed, against Detroit, who is 32nd against opposing quarterbacks. So even Bailey Zappi, if I had, if my quarterback wasn't going Thursday night, if I didn't have to make a stupid decision there, I might even consider starting Bailey Zappi. And then you got quarterbacks like Teddy Bridgewater against the Jets, 21st against opposing quarterbacks, and even Zach Wilson against Miami. Miami's been atrocious, 31st against opposing quarterbacks. So there are some nice quarterback stream options this week. Again, playing the matchups, playing a situation where you're looking at your quarterback just been underperforming, has a tough matchup. Even guys like Matthew Stafford, he's not been a good quarterback. So if he's been your starter, these are some guys that could fill in a lot nicer than those.
Yeah, I like Zach Wilson. Out of all those guys, that matchup, the Miami defense is 31st in the league. He's the guy that I'm starting in one of my fantasy leagues. So hopefully that comes into fruition.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a nice matchup.
Yep.
Again, if I'm thinking about it right now, I'd start Zach Wilson versus Miami over a lot of bigger name quarterbacks that people probably automatically assume are automatic starts, which they're not this year. Running backs we're looking at: Atlanta running back Tyler Algier. Again, we talked about him last week with Cordero Patterson now on the IR. He's a guy you probably want to go look at. Broncos did recently sign Latavius Murray, even though they got the Melvin Gordon, Mike Boone show with Javonte out for season. Latavius is going to sniff that backfield. He is going to vulture touchdowns. So he is a guy that you want to take a look at. We talked about Tampa Bay running back Rashad White, who spells Leonard Fournette, but he spells him more than just on third down. He plays entire drives. So it's definitely a guy that's worth getting a look at. Receivers, Pittsburgh receiver George Pickens seems to start to, uptake his targets and his catches. And now with Kenny Pickett, maybe he can develop a connection. He is a guy you want to look at. Wide receiver for Detroit, Josh Reynolds. He's a nice fill-in for all of their depleted receiving core. Wide receiver, Arizona Cardinals, Rondale Moore, another guy who is slowly getting healthy. And with Marquise Brown being the only guy that's really getting targets, maybe Marquise Brown and Zach Ertz, Rondale Moore should slot in nicely to at least provide some targets, some underneath routes, end arounds. They're going to find ways to get a gadget player like Moore involved. I talked about Alec Pierce already. He's already played this week, but if this is the target share that he's going to see, he does warrant looking at a, bye week option or a filler option in latter weeks when bye weeks start to ensue. Chargers wide receiver Josh Palmer, another guy we've talked about before on the podcast, as the number 2 right now, maybe the number 3 when Keenan Allen comes back. That is an airing out offense with Justin Herbert, so he's a nice guy that you may want to have. And Patriots wide receiver Devontae Parker, he's another guy that we talk about every year, has a chance to be a number 1 guy, has a chance to erupt. He always gets hurt. He puts up big weeks. He put up a big week last week. He's got a favorable matchup this week against Detroit with Bailey Zappi at the helm. He is not a bad look to look at. Anybody else that you may have thought of, Shovit, that I did not mention?
Maybe the guys from the game yesterday. Deion Jackson for the Colts. I know they have Philip Lindsay, but I feel like with this concussion injury, Deion Jackson maybe moving forward next week may be someone that you want to kind of just stash on your bench. And then Mike Boone, another running back, the backup of Melvin Gordon, he might be a good stash on the bench. Not guys you want to play right away, but just kind of monitor, sort of like Rashad White.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, Injuries are ensuing to the highest degree right now. And like you said, with bye weeks, injuries, there are going to be these players, even though they don't sound sexy, even if you're like, yeah, I'll never start that guy. You never know the state of your roster during a bye week, especially with injuries. So definitely these are some guys that you want to get a good look at. If they have not already been claimed in waivers, they're good free agent pickups to stash on your bench. That's it for Water Cooler Talk. Shove let's jump into the rundown. Sunday morning kicks off with another game in London. The Giants are taking on the Packers. Their Packers favored by 8 points, over under sitting at 41. It is a battle of 3-1 teams. Giants, I don't know how they're 3-1. They've had a pretty cush schedule. Packers, despite the loss to the Vikings to start the season, have strung off 3 straight victories. To me, this is going to be a battle of the running backs. Saquon Barkley is going against a Packers run defense that is not very good, 11th worst against rushing. And then the combination of Jones and Dillon are going up against the Giants, who are 5th worst against rushing yards per game allowed with 141 yards per game. So you're looking at a battle of the running backs this week. Giants defensive numbers are a fluke. Like I mentioned, they played Ryan Tannehill, Baker Mayfield, Cooper Rush, and Justin Fields. So that's not really a juggernaut of quarterbacks, if you will. So this is going to be probably their biggest test of the year thus far. Aaron Rodgers, again, finally getting some production from Romeo Doubs, who stepped up. Alan Lazard is there nicely, who's caught touchdown passes here recently. So you're looking at a Packers team that's slowly starting to figure out its identity, if you will, finally getting playmakers on the outside. The defense is supposed to be good, right? And so with Daniel Jones coming back from a concussion, all of their receivers are hurt. Kenny Golladay, Kadarius Toney, Wan'Dale Robinson, Sterling Shepard's out for season. So it's like, who's catching passes? Richie James again? So, I like the Packers here. 8's a lot. I do like them in a certain type of bet that we'll talk more about in Moneymaker later. But in terms of fantasy, who you're starting Saquon, you're starting Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. You're probably starting Romeo Doubs at this point. Alan Lazard, I say, is 50-50 depending on your receiving core. Even Aaron Rodgers, with the Giants defense, he is 50-50 considering all of the streaming options we talked about earlier. But again, Packers, Giants in London. Make sure you don't do the Alvin Kamara bit from last week where, you're like, oh, game in London. Well, this year, guys, there's like 4 or 5 games in London. So get ready to start setting your alarms for 9:30 a.m. Eastern time on Sunday morning, or I guess 9:25. Give yourself a 5-minute buffer to set your lineups and make sure, no last minute inactives occur.
Yeah, I might be wrong, but there's a game like in Germany too this year, I believe. So yeah, you got to definitely stay up to date with your injuries for this.
NFL is going global, baby.
Yeah. All right, next up, we've got the Pittsburgh Steelers traveling to Buffalo to play the Bills, and this is going to be Kenny Pickett's first full season game. Are you excited? I'm excited. I can't wait to see what he has in store. He'll need to play a phenomenal game, especially because of the injuries that the Steelers are going through right now. Some of the guys that are limited in practice or out is Terrell Edmonds, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Cam Sutton, Ahkello Witherspoon, who is out, and even Cam Hayward. So all huge, big names in this defense, and obviously TJ Watt still out. So Kenny Pickett and the offense need to score points. That's how they're going to be competitive in this game. The Bills are favored by 14 points. Over-under is at 45.5. So no one is going to think that the Steelers are going to win. But if they do, and Kenny Pickett rises to the occasions, I mean, that's going to be the greatest feeling ever as a Steelers fan personally. Fun fact, Kenny Pickett's first start against a number 1 defense, first start against the number 1 defense, the last time a player played a number 1 defense and won the game was in 2004. Can you guess who that quarterback was?
Big Ben.
That's right, Ben Roethlisberger. So was the last guy. Now Kenny Pickett, passes the torch over to him. So hopefully they can come out on top. They've got the guys. They've got Deontay Johnson. They've got Freiermuth, who I think will have a solid game. And George Pickens and Kenny Pickett have a really good chemistry going on. So I think that there's enough offensive power now, whether or not they can stop this really good pass defense, which ranks top 5 in sacks. They're allowing, they're just doing really well on defense. So I think that that there is a chance for owners that have Najee Harris on your team. I'm sorry, but this probably will not be a type of game that Najee Harris will be successful on. And I may be wrong, but the data shows that Najee Harris is not coming off a great season just because of the offensive line issues as well. And based on what we saw with Kenny Pickett instead of dumping the ball off to Najee Harris, that kind of what Trubisky's doing, he likes to run the ball more. So I feel like that is going to limit some of Najee Harris's points. The way I think about this is Kenny Pickett is going to have to play like, I feel like Patrick Mahomes a little bit. I keep saying Patrick Mahomes, relating him to Mitch Trubisky. I think
it's so easy to do.
Yeah, yeah, right. So easy to do. No, not really. It's gonna be incredibly hard. But if the Steelers put up points against this Bills defense, that's the way they score. And so Bills are favored, and they're probably gonna end up winning. But it's gonna be a fun game to watch.
Yeah, I mean, one of my bets I really do actually like, to be honest, Jovit, is Bills -14. I had it's a big spread, but how in the world is Pittsburgh going to score, and how are they going to stop? Like, without a pass rush, Pittsburgh can't stop anybody. And with TJ Watt out, their pass rush really, really suffers. Minka is playing, so Minka is going to play, which is good for them. But man, I don't know, man. This could get, if the game starts out like 7-0 Buffalo, this is going to get very ugly very fast. Playing from behind, playing against a defense like that, having offensive limitations, offensive line and defensive line issues. It's just not. All signs are spelling disaster. So, like you said, it would be an improbable victory if they somehow pull away victorious here.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the largest spread for this week, and the Steelers defense isn't something that's been really great, allowing 383 yards per game as well. So yeah, it's going to be a tough matchup. But one guy I do want to highlight, I have this guy on my team, and I haven't started him all year, but Gabe Davis against this Pittsburgh defense, I think would be a good start if you are on the fence with some of your other receivers.
Yeah, just trade it for Gabe Davis. Still high on him, and I'm definitely starting him this week. So unless, again, it's a Josh Allen, Devin Singletary show where they can just run it down your throats, I expect all fantasy points to be had on Buffalo's side. That takes us to Cleveland, where the Chargers are in town. Chargers favored on the road, 2.5 points, over under 47. This is a battle of 2-2 teams. Chargers have the number 1 passing game in the league in terms of yards per game, and the Browns come in with the number 2 rushing offense in the league. So last year, these teams faced off. Chargers won 47-42 with Justin Herbert throwing for 398 yards, 4 touchdowns, and Chubb still had a great game, 21 carries, 161 and a touchdown. So I'm expecting a lot more of that similar facet. I don't know if it's going to be that quite high scoring, but I do expect Herbert to still perform. I expect Chubb to get his. Myles Garrett is back. That is huge for the Browns with pass rush. So that is going to be something to watch out for, especially with Rashawn Slater, the tackle for the Chargers, out for season. In terms of fantasy guys, you're starting all of them. You're starting Herbert, you're starting Eckler, you're starting Mike Williams. Gerald Everett did pop on the injury report, I believe, today, but if he's playing, you're starting him. And then for the Browns, Chubb and Hunt, you're starting. Njoku's become a really nice tight end early in the season, with Brissett liking to go his way a lot. I almost think you start Njoku with more confidence than you start one of the receivers like Amari Cooper, who's been hit or miss. I mean, he had a couple of really nice games, and then he had an absolute dud last week. But if you've known Amari Cooper in the league long enough, you know that's kind of what Amari Cooper is. So take with that what you will. But other than Amari Cooper, all the guys I named, you are going to deploy them without fear. Should be a nice battle. I'm expecting a lot of points, but I do think as long as the Chargers can do just enough on the defensive side to force Brissett to throw, and not just having Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt run the clock and, control the clock and, waste all the time, the Chargers should come away victorious here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I definitely lean Chargers here. So many 2-2 teams this year.
A lot of mediocrity.
Yeah. Next up, we've got the Chicago Bears playing against your Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings are favored by 7.5, and the over-under is 44 points here. The Bears, man, kind of like went back in time. I feel
the worst team in the league.
They're arguably the worst team in the league, not record-wise, but just as a whole. And they run the ball more than they pass the ball, a lot more than they pass the ball. The Bears have only completed 34 passes, which is the fewest in the first 4 games in the last 40 years. So it's like
so ridiculous.
Get with the program. It's a pass first offense, right? But they're behind times, and however, they are pretty efficient when it comes to the run game. They're 4th in run efficiency at 5.2 yards per carry and now they have the great Khalil Herbert, who is going to be the lead back there with Montgomery still out. So all in all, I think that the key to success for the Bears is going to be trying to exploit the Vikings run defense and running the ball and seeing how efficient they can be, like they have with some of the other teams. But it's an uphill battle. Like I said, the line's favored by the Vikings are favored by 7.5 points, and the Vikings have all of the key pieces on offense. What I liked that the Vikings did really well is they targeted Thielen, targeted Osborne. They have other guys that they can target outside of Justin Jefferson. If they can just do that, then they're going to be pretty well. There's an interesting stat if you're looking to bet on this Vikings game. When they're favored at home, they're 8-12 against the spread, but 14-6 on the when it comes to in regards to the money line. So winning is not the problem here. The 7.5 is a little bit scary just as far as the 8-12 stat is concerned. But the Vikings, should be able to beat a struggling young quarterback, poor offensive line, no name receivers, and just, a decent defense, right? So the Vikings should come out on top in this game.
Yeah, I mean, as a Viking fan, it's really, really tough to look at a game and be like, this is a game the Vikings should win, because there have been a lot of games where the Vikings should have won, and they have the tendency to play down to their level of competition, right? And the one thing the Bears do well is run the football. Well, the Vikings are one of the worst teams at defending the run. So this is a recipe that, could be a closer game than anticipated if the Vikings offense doesn't step on the Bears defense's throat. They are starting 3 cornerbacks that are, I can't remember, like 55 overall grade, 45 overall grade, and 35 overall grade per PFF. So those are not 3 guys that can cover Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, and KJ Osborne. So I expect the Vikings to finally play a game where they're beating a team handedly and taking care of business. And as long as they go up early, you take away that entire running offense of Chicago. As much as they're going to want to run the football, let them run. If we're up 10 points, 14 points, 17 points, it doesn't matter. But if you go up enough and you force Justin Fields to beat you, right now he has proven that he cannot do anything with his arm. So that's the recipe. It sounds great on paper, but something about being a Vikings fan just continues to gnaw at me, saying that they're going to play to their level of competition, and this game's going to be closer than it needs to be.
Yeah, one thing I'll add about and Kirk Cousins, one thing I'm noticing is that, like, when he's rattled, he kind of makes dumb decisions, or like he goes and leans too much on Justin Jefferson instead of some of the other guys. Like, he's not as poised as you would think he would be with the stats that he has, like, multiple touchdowns and no interceptions. But then, like, when it comes to push to shove and you really have to make a play, like, I don't know if Kirk Cousins is that guy that you can kind of lean on throughout the game.
I mean, that's been my criticism of him this entire time, right? I mean, he puts up great numbers. He's one of the worst in the league when it comes to throwing under pressure. But, everyone's like, well, obviously, why wouldn't somebody be bad when they're getting pressured? Well, there's a lot of people that are really good throwing under pressure because they know how to evade pressure. They don't have to be a running quarterback. They just have to know how to move in the pocket. And Kirk's shown flashes of improving that this year. But like you said, when push comes to shove, when things get rattled, when he gets rattled, it's really hard for him to get back into the zone or get into a groove. It has to be like very, very scripted perfectly for him to play well. But despite how mediocre he's playing, the Vikings are 3-1, where last year and the year before, he'd be putting up great stats and the Vikings would be 1-3, right? So at the end of the day, give me 3-1 over 1-3 with the quarterback still having a tremendous amount of room for improvement. Yep. That takes us to New England, where the Patriots are hosting the number 1 offense in the league. Who's the number 1 offense in the league? They are the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions come into town with the number 1 offense, but womp, womp, womp. They have the 32nd ranked defense in terms of total yards per game. So this is a team that loves to score, but also loves to get scored on. Patriots at home favored by 3, over under 45.5. Patriots might be starting 3rd string quarterback Bailey Zappi. Not might. He is officially going to be starting with Mac Jones listed as doubtful, but he's got a nice matchup against the Lions. Their defense is awful. You're probably starting the Patriots running backs, very, very comfortably. Ramondre Stevenson, Damian Harris, both probably deserve to get started. We talked about Jared Goff earlier. To me, he's leaning, if you're in a quarterback situation that's not one of the elites, I'm leaning 60% start Goff versus 40% not, even despite the Patriots matchup. I just think this offense has changed now. They're dynamic. They love to score. They love to throw, and they're trying to push tempo. So I expect even with he could throw 2-3 interceptions and still somehow have a decent fantasy day. So I look at Goff as maybe 60-40. Jamal Williams, automatic start with Swift out again. Hawkinson after last week, it's impossible not to start that guy unless you were Shoshot and you dropped him, of course. And then Josh Reynolds, 50-50. Again, this to me, somebody's got to get the ball, right? If Hawkinson put up, the day he put up last week, The Patriots come in this week saying, we got to stop Hawkinson. And that means that somebody's going to have to be the recipient of Jared Goff's passes. And Josh Reynolds might just, by sheer volume and being on the field, being present, put up a decent day. So those are the guys I'm looking out for. Patriots at home against a Lions team that just suffers on defense. This kind of, to me, favors in the Patriots game script where they can run the ball, just kind of continue to, bear down that defense and destroy that defense and get them tired eventually. And then in the fourth quarter, you're going to see really big gaping, gashing holes. And again, the Lions have a good job and have done a good job of coming back, scoring a lot of points quickly. But I think Bill Belichick at home as basically a coin flip home, getting the home field advantage in terms of the spread. Give me the Patriots at home in this one.
Yeah, I'm probably staying away from any betting as far as this game goes, but Stevenson for sure going to start him this week.
Yep.
Next up, we have the Seattle Seahawks at New Orleans Saints. The Seahawks coming out of a big win against the guys we just talked about, Lions, led by Geno Smith, Ty Lockett, and DK Metcalf, and Rashad Penny. They're coming off a big win. I believe they're going to have a more tough matchup against the New Orleans Saints. On the Saints side, there's no Jameis Winston, but Alvin Kamara is coming back. The Seattle is tied for third worst in terms of rushing yards allowed per attempt. So Alvin Kamara owners, you've got to feel like there's a feast coming soon your way. And more players on the Saints side, Chris Olave, he is turning into a must start. The guy is going to be the number one receiver with Michael Thomas or without Michael Thomas. I mean, he's going to get his target. So be happy if you have him on your team and definitely start him. Some matchups I'm looking out for is Metcalf versus Lattimore. Lattimore is a big name cornerback, but he's been kind of, hit or miss as far as this year goes. Justin Jefferson, had an amazing day last week in London against Lattimore. And so Metcalf is going to have to face him. And we'll see which way that leans. But I'm going to favor Metcalf and Geno Smith in this. Speaking of favoring, the New Orleans Saints are favored by 5.5 points, and over-under is at 46.5. I think that the reason for the spread, given the Seahawks are coming off a huge victory and they're not getting favored, because the Seahawks defense ranks 31st in the league. So the Saints are able to exploit that defense and put up points. Then I think that they should come up with a win. You never know what the Seahawks are going to provide you, whether you'll see a good version of Geno Smith. I mean, he's accurate, but whether or not that's enough to win the game, we shall see. I'm going to lean Saints. Although I'm nervous about that, it's really a toss-up for me.
Yeah, Geno Smith seems like the early season don't doubt him guy, right? I know the schedule's been favorable, and again, the Lions were so bad last week, 32nd ranked defense, and so points were there to be had. This is definitely a tougher test in the Superdome again against the Saints with the supposedly good defense, right? And so Seattle is looking for probably a regression spot here with Geno on the road, but again, the one guy we shouldn't doubt this year, at least thus far through 4 weeks, is Geno Smith. So let's see if he can pull another rabbit out of his hat. Next up, we got a divisional matchup. The Miami Dolphins and Teddy Bridgewater, who is going to be starting, traveled to New York to take on the Jets with Zach Wilson back. Miami on the road favored by 3.5, over under sitting at 46. Dolphins come in at 3-1. Jets are 2-2. It is the Teddy Bridgewater versus Zach Wilson matchup. Both teams do not run the ball particularly well. The Dolphins have been really, really bad against the pass, but they played the Bengals, the Bills, the Ravens, and the Patriots, right? So Bengals, Bills, Ravens, traditionally guys with good quarterbacks and good offenses. So, Dolphins have had a very, very tough schedule to start. This does seem to ease up a little bit for them. You're looking at probably a lot of question marks heading into this game. A lot of guys on the injury report. Tyreek Hill came up on the injury report, and now they're saying they're hopeful he's going to play. So that's a guy you want to monitor. Waddle's been hobbling. And so you already know you're getting Teddy Bridgewater as the backup quarterback. So there could be a lot of injuries that loom for this Dolphins team, and it kind of presents a nice kind of steal spot for the Jets at home against a divisional opponent who's coming in hobbled, right? I mean, if you're getting Teddy Bridgewater, the backup quarterback, you're getting a hobbly Hill and a hobbly Waddle. I mean, I know you probably take hobbled Hill and Waddle over 100% receiver, like a lot of receivers in the NFL that are at 100% strength, but still, this is an opportunity for the Jets, who have playmakers of their own, to finally step up and win a game. I mean, I think the tall task is going to fall on the shoulders of Zach Wilson. He has Breece Hall. He has good receivers. The thing that's been different with Wilson since he got back and Flacco left is the love for Garrett Wilson has not been as prevalent, right? He loves to spread the ball. He's getting Corey Davis involved a lot. Elijah Moore's still there. And you have Wilson, and Tyler Conklin has become a really nice tight end. And somebody that you probably look at possibly starting in fantasy because tight end's been such a shit show. And Kyle Pitts is out. So people that have Kyle Pitts, this is totally something that's different from this segment, but I had to bring up tight end and Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is out. So all Kyle Pitts owners can rejoice and be very confident that you don't have to start them based on the sheer fact of where you drafted him. You can finally bench Pitts, and hopefully the tight end you pick up, i.e. Conklin, actually puts together a nice day. So to me, Jets have the opportunity here to steal one at home with Dolphins coming in hobbled. But again, Teddy Bridgewater is that classic backup quarterback, that does just enough. So I'm expecting this to be a tight game. Dolphins defense is not great, but I do have kind of upset watch here. Jets at home to take this one.
Yeah, I take a hobbled Tyreek Hill over Darnell Mooney.
Oh,
any day.
100% of the time. You'd probably take Hill and Waddle combined on crutches with only one leg operating over a 100% healthy Allen Robinson, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Jeez. It's not even his fault, you know?
No, it's not. Yeah. We'll get into that game.
Yeah. All right. Next up, we've got the Atlanta Falcons at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And we've already talked about the key injury here. Kyle Pitts is out, but also Cameron Brate is ruled out. So the tight ends are not going to be, the starting tight ends aren't going to play for each of these teams. And also no Cordell Patterson. So like we talked about in waiver pickups, Tyler Algier should be a good start. And then Caleb Huntley is also there. So they may have actually some split carries there too. But Algier seems like a pretty decent running back as far as how, efficiency is concerned. So you've got to like the Falcons running game chances there. So in terms of how Tom Brady himself is against the Falcons, he's 9-0 against the Falcons. And Mike Evans statistically has had the best game against the Falcons. So the Bucs have no reason to not have a bounce back game against these Atlanta Falcons. Now, what can the Falcons do to actually win this game? Like I said, that run game has to be led by Tyler Algier, Caleb Huntley. They need to really get going. Mariota, another guy, everyone just needs to mimic Mahomes, but specifically Mariota needs to mimic Mahomes because, the Buccaneers, the reason that the Buccaneers didn't have enough sacks against Mahomes is his ability to evade the pocket. And Mariota has that, right? He can evade the pocket. Whether or not he's as accurate, he's definitely not as accurate, but he's got to do that against his Buccaneers defense. So that those are some things. Mariota needs to play better. Run game needs to be better. Defensive tackle Grady Jarrett's nickname is "You Shall Not Pass." 3.5 sacks for the most for the defensive tackle for the Falcons. He needs to have a good game, be able to exploit the Buccaneers offensive line, which I still don't think is that good. I think that Tom Brady is definitely, gets pressured and can get sacked. So he's got to have a solid game. But Bucs just have too much firepower. Chris Godwin is back. We talked about Evans, Leonard Fournette should have a strong game here. Hopefully he doesn't get vultured by White, but I think White's time's not here yet. I think it's still Lenny's, position to be taken. And so I think the Buccaneers end up coming up with a win here. They're favored by -10 points, and over/under is at 46.5.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing there is, the key to the stop the bleeding for Mike Evans having career days against the Falcons is AJ Terrell. Terrell has to be the guy that steps up and shuts down Mike Evans. I'm playing against Mike Evans this week, so I need it to be a Godwin day everywhere. I traded away Chris Godwin, but I'd be happy if he has a big day. But AJ Terrell has to stop Mike Evans because Tom Brady's go-to guy in the red zone right now is Mike Evans. Without Gronk, it's 100% Mike Evans right now. Mike Evans could be a guy that, strings together close to 12 to 15 touchdowns this season, just based on the fact that he is the biggest target for them in the red zone. So I think that's going to be the key to success. It's a big spread, -10 points for Tampa Bay at home. But knowing that Brady's getting the weapons back and knowing who the team is on the other side, they've had a nice story so far the first couple of weeks putting up points. But this seems like the week that, they get brought back down to earth. That takes us to Washington, where the Commanders are hosting the Tennessee Titans. Titans on the road, favored by 1.5 points, over/under sitting at 43. Titans coming into this game 2-2. Commanders now 1-3. The Titans have the 29th overall offense, but they are going up against the Commanders, who have the 23rd overall defense. And on the flip side, the Commanders have the 23rd overall offense, and they're going against the Titans, who have the 26th overall defense. What does that mean? It seems like it's going to be an ugly game. Over under only sitting at 43. I'm expecting a lot of running for Tennessee, as they do with Derrick Henry, who's coming off his first 100-yard game of the season. He has scored touchdowns in 3 consecutive games. And then on the Commander side, you're looking at Brian Robinson, finally activated after being shot. So they don't know if he's going to play, but there are already rumors that he could be activated. So slowly they're going to start to ease him in. He is not a must start in fantasy by any means yet, but this does seem like with the resistance they have towards Gibson, or letting Gibson really be the guy, that Robinson has a chance to come in here and be the guy once he starts to get in game shape and slowly learn the offensive system. You're looking at, the Titans, who obviously start out hot. They've scored a touchdown on their opening possession in every single football game this year. So if Tennessee can control the clock, run the football, score on their opening drive like they had, Commanders could be in a show where Wentz is going to have to drop back 30 to 40 times this game again. That could spell good fantasy points if you're streaming Carson Wentz this week against a struggling Titans defense. Jahan Dotson is going to be out. Curtis Samuel is hobbled as well. So, if you have Terry McLaurin, this could be a week where he finally gets his. So a lot of injuries. Not going to be the prettiest of games, but the Titans on the road here, 1.5-point favorites. As long as Derrick Henry does his thing, that Titans defense, should hold up enough, and Wentz should do just enough to, give them the victory, if you will.
But at what point do you think Wentz gets benched for Sam Howell? Like, do you think? If they do terrible, and Carson Wentz, he's not the answer, right? I mean, you got to kind of let Taylor Heineke's not going to be a guy that you want leading this team either. Sam Howell is a rookie. I mean, get him some reps.
I mean, I think, knowing that the NFC is kind of wide open right now this year, they're 1-3. Obviously, the season's not gone by any stretch of the imagination. If I look at the Commanders in maybe 2 weeks even, and they're 1-5, I think you're going to start to hear rumblings. The problem becomes the pressure that gets put on the front office when you have to bench a guy that you traded in the offseason and gave up like 2 or 3 draft picks for. Not the highest of draft picks, but still there was some value to Wentz, and that's why you traded him. That's why you said you'd rather take Wentz over Kirk Cousins. I mean, who's laughing now? But with all that being said, they traded for him, so there is pressure on the front office to continue to put him out there, being like, this was the guy we traded for. But I think if you see 1-5, at the 1-5 mark is when they're going to start to hear rumblings about, we're going to have an open, tryout in terms of like, it's, Sam Howell can win the job in practice, et cetera, all this stuff. But 1-5, they'll start to talk about it. 1-6, 1-7, I could see them to make the move, because at that point, the season is probably lost. Wentz is not the long-term answer because he's never been. And like you said, let's give Sam Howell a shot, see what he has, and at least let him learn in a season that's already lost. Yeah,
absolutely. Get him some reps out there.
Yep.
All right, next up, we've got the Houston Texans at Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars are favored by -7. Over/under is 43.5. The Jaguars are coming off of a tough loss against the Philadelphia Eagles, and they have a favorable matchup here against the Texans. The Texans aren't the worst team, but they're not anything that's great that will it's going to be a truly tough matchup for the Jaguars. I think the Jaguars can come here. The Jags, what they did wrong was they allowed way too many rushing yards, 131 yards and 2 scores to Miles Sanders last week, and now they face Dameon Pierce. Outside of last week, they've been doing pretty well on the run game. The run game only allowed an average of 44 yards per game the first 4 weeks. So they need to get back to that. They need to be able to stop Dameon Pierce, and that will, make Davis Mills the guy that has to win them the ball game, and you take your chances there. The Jaguars, all in all, are a complete team. The offense is good. The defense is respectable. So I think that they should come out victorious in terms of this game is concerned. One thing the Texans have going for them, they are top 3 in blitzing rate, sacks, hurries, and pressures. And one thing Trevor Lawrence had issues with was getting sacked often in his first year of last year. But hopefully this offensive line is going to be good enough to hold off the Texans blitzing and come up with a win in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest difference for them is you look at the Jaguars, you look at their offensive line this year, and they have Robinson as their left tackle, who is, I think, 37th in terms of PFF grade. You look at their right guard that they signed, Brandon Scherff, is 20th and out of 68 guards. So they have improved their offensive line a little bit from last year. And I think, this is a game where if the Texans are really good at pressuring, that's the one good thing. What did Trevor Lawrence do last year when he was getting pressured a lot? He dumped the ball off quite a bit, right? And that's where you finally get to maybe unleash Etienne. Maybe this is the week where Robinson is a must start, but if you're searching for a guy that you need to flex that has some upside, Etienne might be a nice spell. He might be a nice guy that comes in and still gets enough carries or catches and touches to warrant a respectable fantasy day. And the Texans are the defense to do it against. So, I'm with you. I think the Jaguars should take care of business. Big spread for a team like Jacksonville always scares me because they're the classic team that, when you're expected to win and you're expected to win handily, that's when they'll disappoint you most. Arguably the most lopsided game of the week, despite what the spread indicates. The 49ers are traveling to Carolina to take on the Panthers. 49ers on the road, favored by 6.5 points, over under sitting at 39.5. 49ers coming into this game 2-2. The Panthers are 1-3. The 49ers have the best defense in the NFL statistically, and the Panthers statistically have the worst offense in the NFL. So this is a David versus Goliath matchup if you've ever seen one. The Panthers have no answer on offense. Baker's last in the NFL in QBR. He leads the NFL in 11 batted balls at the line of scrimmage, man. That has got to be one of the most frustrating things as a fan, maybe even as Baker Mayfield, to continue to see.
Have you heard his press conference of when they asked him what he should do about his batted balls?
No, what does he say?
Maybe I should lay down and someone could stretch me out and get me to be taller or something. And he's like, shout out to mom and dad for making me this short.
Dude, there's been plenty of short quarterbacks, the Russell Wilsons, the Drew Breeses, that figure out how to not get the ball batted, right? So I think it's a you problem, Baker. I don't think it has anything to do with your genetics, but it is. I mean, you are at a disadvantage when you're shorter, right? The offensive line are bigger, the defensive linemen are bigger. So you have to figure out a way to be throwing over the top or throwing subtle pump fakes or doing just enough to be disguising your release, right? Not being so transparent about when you're going to throw the football, because that's when it gets batted. So 11 batted balls through 4 weeks is asinine. I mean, think about all the times that probably receivers are open somewhere and Baker's throwing the ball thinking he's got a first down. What wouldn't you know, a batted ball? So I think that's one of the most frustrating ways to see drives stall, to see things like that happen, because it's just kind of well, what if? Oh, he was running free down the sideline, so Baker just throwing the ball a little bit higher, and so the coulda, woulda, shouldas for the Panthers are continuing to kind of add up. The best thing about the Panthers is their defense, their pass rush. They have J.C. Horn, who's a really nice young cornerback. Brian Burns is really, really great off the edge as well. But as a whole, they're still very, very subpar, and their offense always puts their defense in really bad situations, i.e. Baker Mayfield. So I think, we got a question on Twitter. Do you start CMC against the 49ers defense? CMC is probably the only guy on the Panthers team that you even think about starting. And I get why you'd ask the question, but the floor for CMC, especially as a pass catcher, is too high to, try to take a chance and not start somebody who, has been RB1 in seasons where he's completely healthy and by a landslide. So I think CMC is a must start regardless. But on the 49ers side against this Panthers defense, I'm starting Jeff Wilson. Dude, I did it again. I'm starting Jeff Wilson. I'm starting Deebo Samuel. Brandon Ayuk has started to get a decent amount of targets with Jimmy G at the helm. So he might be a guy you're thinking about flexing. Still haven't seen enough from Kittle. He did drop the touchdown. So he could have had a respectable day last week, but outside of that, 2 catches, still not enough for me to throw Kittle in the starting lineup. But on the Panthers side, again, you're probably just starting CMC. And again, 49ers defense, if you have them going, you're probably in for a great week.
All right, next up, we've got the Dallas Cowboys traveling to the LA Rams. The Rams are favored by 5.5, and over under is 42.5. And this game is a tough game for me to kind of pick sides on. In terms of the which team is better, I really do think Cowboys are a better team because of that defense. The offensive line for the Rams are playing trash. I mean, they've got Shelton, who's their guard, is out, and the Cowboys, with DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons, that is a scary defense. And Trayvon Diggs, who's out there, that's boom or bust, but most of the time it's boom, and he gets those interceptions, and those are the defining aspects of the game that allow you to win the game. So I think that the Cowboys are not favored because of their quarterback situation with Cooper Rush. Dak Prescott's still not there, and there's just not enough faith in it. So I kind of want to lean the Cowboys. In terms of offense, both offense are putrid. Dallas is 28th in the NFL, and Rams are 29th. Dallas has some good pieces as far as Noah Brown coming in, CeeDee Lamb, but they've got the Ezekiel Elliott and Pollard running it, so they have the pieces there. That just hasn't, as far as stats, you're just not seeing that as you would like for to be able to win the games and have lines that favor you, because right now it's just the defense, really.
Yeah.
And so the Rams and the Rams side, they're just not running the ball well either. So you got these two not good offensive, defensive that are strong. So it's going to be interesting to see which team actually comes up on top. And another matchup I'm looking at is Cooper Kupp versus Diggs. I think that anytime you have wide receiver 1 versus Diggs, I just want to see if Diggs gets exploited or not. Because again, boomer bust, whether or not he'll come with the pick, what's going to be the defining factor. I'm going to lean to the Cowboys, but the defense can only do so much. Cowboys are going to need to put up points, and if they can do that, they can win. So leaning Cowboys here because of that defense.
Yeah, and the Kupp versus Diggs thing is interesting because Kupp's mostly going to line up in the slot. I think Diggs mostly plays outside, so how much they actually match up against each other, we'll see. But like you said, it is a battle of defenses. The problem and the reason that the line is favoring the Rams still pretty heavily, based on where these teams are at, is like you said, the quarterback play, right? I mean, I think Vegas, along with everybody, probably Cowboys fans, probably all NFL watchers, still doubt Cooper Rush, and rightfully so, because he's just getting the job done. He's not doing anything crazy. He's just protecting the football and doing just enough. There's going to be a time where a defense is going to exploit that, where a defense is going to make Cooper Rush throw the football. And what better defense than the Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Donald led defense like the Rams, who are coming off really, really disappointing losses and need to right the ship. And they're coming back at home. They have a backup quarterback, that they're playing against. So this could be a big bounce back week for the Rams. But like you said, it's easy to create that narrative, but the numbers on paper show that this Cowboys defense can obviously hang with the Rams offense, who's been just nothing short of abysmal. No running game, no receivers outside of Cooper Kupp and, maybe Tyler Higbee. And again, on the Cowboys offensive side, the running game has been basically not there, right? It's been like very, very sporadic, just enough, getting the first down, kicking the field goals, playing good defense interceptions, strip sack fumbles to put your offense in very fortunate offensive situations. That's led the way for them. So again, that blueprint is something that's really tough to sustain week in and week out, where you have to rely on your defense through 17 games to continue to put you in advantageous situations. But I think, again, the Rams have a really nice opportunity to bounce back and right the ship. But right now, it's easier said than done because that offensive line is so bad.
Right.
Stafford does not look anywhere outside of Cooper Kupp. And until you can get Allen Robinson going, or at least pose him as a threat to opposing defenses, the defenses are just going to continue to hone in on Cooper Kupp. That takes us to Arizona with a battle of running quarterbacks. The Eagles come in here as 5-point favorites as the only 4-0 team left in the NFL, over under 49. Cardinals at home, 2-2. Cardinals won their last home game a year ago, Shovit. A year ago, October of 2021 was the last time Arizona won a home football game. So Arizona at home has been absolutely putrid. They cannot play at home. Eagles come into this game as probably the most well-rounded team in all of football. They're top 10 in overall offense, rushing offense, passing offense, and scoring offense. And on defense, top 10 in overall defense, rushing defense, passing defense, and scoring defense. So they are quite literally the most well-rounded football team in the NFL. So it is going to be really, really difficult for the Cardinals, whose offense has been very, very sputtery, just, kind of coming to life late out of sheer necessity, out of Kyler Murray making things happen, falling from behind early. And the Eagles are not a team you want to fall from behind early on, because they can run the football well and they have great cornerbacks. They have a good pass rush. So the defense is not going to put the Cardinals offense in positions to succeed, no matter how much they're losing by, just because the Eagles defense is so opportunistic. And you look at the Eagles being number 1 in turnover differential at +8, the Cardinals, who are also pretty good, they're +4. But again, this Eagles team is feasting right now. They're playing complementary football. Jalen Hurts is coming into his own. His only bad game was last week in that monsoon light game against the Jaguars. But you're comfortably starting Jalen Hurts. You're comfortably starting Miles Sanders. You're comfortably starting A.J. Brown. You're comfortably starting Dallas Goedert. And then on the Cardinals side, you're by necessity starting Kyler Murray. You're probably starting James Conner. You're comfortably starting Zach Ertz. And, it sucks because he gets put into another not advantageous matchup. But how can you not start Hollywood Brown? just based on targets. I know there's Bradbury. I know there's big play Slay, but how can you not start Hollywood Brown just based on the fact that if they go down 30 points, when they're coming from behind, the only place Kyler Murray throws to is Zach Ertz and Hollywood Brown right now. So Rondale Moore is healthy and he is coming back. They're going to get Hopkins back in a couple weeks. I think AJ Brown is still hobbled, but it's a tall task for Arizona at home with the Eagles, being the most well-rounded football team and playing so well still.
Yeah, it should be a fun game to watch. I hope that the Eagles kind of get dethroned, take a 4-1, but it might be too difficult for the Cardinals to do that.
Yeah.
Next up, Sunday Night Football. We've got the Cincinnati Bengals at Baltimore Ravens. That should be an exciting game. Baltimore is favored by 3.5 points. Over/under is at 48. Baltimore is one of those teams that are 2-2, but they could have easily been 4-0, right?
Had they been trailing for 14 seconds, right? Or is it for the entire? Yeah, I think for the entire season they're 2-2, but have only trailed a total of 14 seconds. Just think about
that's incredible. The defensive stats from their first half of the game versus the second half is like a whole nother, like tale of two tales, right? So their defense needs to play consistent throughout the 4 quarters, right? So they're 30th in the league, allowing 353 yards per game. Basically one of the worst teams as far as defense goes. And so the Bengals, you would think that their offense is going to be really good this year and that they've got all the weapons, in terms of Chase, in terms of your receiver, Higgins, right? So you think that, Chase, Higgins, and Mixon, that trio or 4, whatever you want to call it, you think that would be something that is really good for the offense. But you know what? They haven't actually been playing really well in terms of offense goes. If you just look back at the Miami Dolphins game, there were a lot of opportunities for the Bengals to go out and score, but they weren't able to score as many points just because of I'm not sure what it was, but this offense needs to continue to get to rolling. And what better than one of the worst defenses in the NFL in Baltimore Ravens? And one of the things that I was kind of reading on this is that the Bengals may be a little bit too predictable. So when they align in shotgun, they call a pass play 78% of the time. And when he's under the center, it's a run play 75% of the time. So
those are glaring numbers,
right? I mean, when I saw the shotgun at 78% of the time, I'm like, well, how often do other teams running plays on shotgun? And maybe you have draws and things like that. And I was thinking about that.
And if you have a running quarterback and you're doing read options, but Burrow's obviously not that.
Right, Burrow's not that. But under the center, they're going to call a run play 75% of the time. I mean,
3 out of 4 plays are running. If you're under center, that's so predictable.
Exactly. So, if you're Mixon and the defense knows that you're going to run the ball,
you have no shot.
You've got no shot. So, but again, this is going to be a bounce back game for the Bengals to be able to beat to have a better offense against the terrible Ravens defense. And on the other side, this is Ravens' chance, the defense to kind of say, you know what, we're going to stop the Bengals and we're not going to allow you to do what you want to do. And so it's going to be interesting. Who wins that battle is really going to be the deciding factor. Honestly, I don't know which way to lean. The Bengals last year were 2-0 against the Ravens. So Joe Burrow historically has had a pretty good track record against the Ravens. So because of that, really is the only reason I'm leaning Bengals. And I don't think that the Ravens defense is going to be able to hold up and stop this Bengals offense. So yeah, I'm going to lean Bengals. But we'll see. Sunday Night Football should be fun.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't last year the game against the Bengals where Chase went off? He caught the screen pass for a touchdown. He was just destroying and cooking Marlon Humphrey. Yeah. So, right. I mean, if Humphrey has any bit of mental fortitude, he's probably out for blood, revenge. But at the same time, the Bengals come into this one probably pretty confident, being like, guys, look what we did to these exact same players last year. We absolutely feasted. So 48 seems low. But every time this year, when I think a game is going to go over, it doesn't. A lot of scoring is just not happening in the NFL this year. So I'm worried that, I could say this game should on paper go over, but it could be a 24-21 game and the under hits. So I don't know. You're just like you. I don't have a lean. I think this game is up in the air with, again, the Ravens 2-2 on paper, but trailing for a total of 14 seconds this year.
Yeah, this is my lowest confidence game. I'm leaning the Bengals, but we haven't even talked about the main guy, the X factor, Lamar Jackson. If Lamar Jackson can come here, I think he's playing a lot better at quarterback than Joe Burrow is. Two different type of quarterbacks, but Lamar Jackson is having an MVP like years. So don't count off the Ravens because anything can happen with Lamar Jackson behind the center.
Yeah, he's been must-watch football all season, at least so far this year. Early MVP candidate. That takes us to Monday Night Football, where Kansas City Chiefs are hosting the Las Vegas Raiders. Chiefs come into this game 7-point favorites. Over under sitting pretty high, 51.5. Raiders come into this game 1-3. Chiefs are 3-1. The story of this game, can Josh Jacobs repeat his historic performance last week? And the answer is no. Josh Jacobs is a fluke. The Chiefs are number one in yards per game allowed against the run this year. So Josh Jacobs having his otherworldly performance is an enigma, is an anomaly. So the guy on Twitter who was asking me, Josh Jacobs is my RB1. Should I bench CMC this week? No, you don't bench CMC. And Josh Jacobs giving you 1 week of amazing performance does not and should not give you full confidence in deploying Josh Jacobs. Now, the Raiders' run offense has been a little bit better this year than they've been last year, but still, you're going up against a Chiefs defense that is number one in yards allowed against the run. This Chiefs offense that is unstoppable right now. So if you're understanding game script, the Chiefs are probably going to be up. The Raiders are going to be down. And when the Raiders are down, they're not going to run the football as much. So Josh Jacobs, you're probably still going to start just because, running backs are scarce if you're not playing the waiver wires right now. But you're not starting that with full confidence, knowing against the defense he's going up against and the history of Josh Jacobs. And the Raiders, 1-3, but all three of their losses this year have been by one score. So the difference for them has been one possession in every single football game. Now, again, this is like such a classic Minnesota Vikings thing. Am I going to look back on last season and be like, man, they lost 8 games by one score or whatever? Most one-score losses in the history of the NFL. Man, if a couple of things just gone their way, they could have been 11-5 or 12-4. No, that's not how it works. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. You should have come through in the clutch and you didn't. And right now, Derek Carr is not the guy I trust in the clutch. He's not the guy I trust in any situation, quite frankly. So I'm looking at this game as Kansas City at home, 7-point favorites. I don't know if they're going to cover the spread because Kansas City hates covering the spread. They just like to toy with teams until it's time to win, and then they'll win the football game. But Kansas City should absolutely win this football game at home in Monday night. And again, last but not least, the Raiders gave up 23 points to the team that made you want to rip your eyes out last night, the Denver Broncos. So if the Denver Broncos scored 23 points against any team this year, you're probably going to want to fade that team. And Las Vegas, I am going to fade you this week. That's it for the rundown show of it. Let's end the episode with Moneymaker. I do have a play this week. I had a couple of plays. It was a week where I had more plays in my brain than I want to actually give out. But my best bet, my favorite play of the week, I am going to do a 2-team 6-point teaser here. Monday or Sunday morning, you better wake up early because I'm going to tease the Green Bay Packers in London down from 8 down to 2. So you're getting the Packers against the Giants, who are hobbled, no receivers, Daniel Jones concussed, only Saquon Barkley against the Packers, get them down to -2. So they just have to win by a field goal. And then I'm looking at the Jacksonville Jaguars. I am afraid, but I shouldn't be because the numbers tell me not to be afraid. But the aura around a team in Jacksonville always tells me to be afraid. Jacksonville, 7-point favorites at home against the Texans. I'm teasing them down to -1. So all the Jaguars need to do basically is win the football game against the Texans at home. And then the Packers have to cover a 2-point spread against the Giants in London. So give me that 6-point teaser. I do like that play for 2 units. I did also like Buffalo -14, but it's just a really big spread to lay the points down on. So it's not an official play. If I have more plays, I will tweet them out at OnlyPlaybook on Twitter. So make sure you follow and turn your notifications on. That is my best bet and my moneymaker for the week. Shovit, have you looked at any lines? You have anything for us?
No, I haven't. I'm just kind of looking at this one that you have. And I think that with what we feel that the Packers are, -2 is amazing. I mean, you definitely want to give -2 against the Giants. And then Jags are looking like the team that's going to take control of that AFC South. And -1 against the Texans. Yeah, I definitely like those chances too.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
again,
solid.
It's when you're playing at home, and I know the Packers aren't necessarily playing at home, but it doesn't really matter in that sense. You're playing at home as the substantially better team, and you're getting them basically just to have to win the football game. Not like every home team always wins football games, but those are bets that I'll take 10 out of 10 times. So yeah. Give me the Packers -2, Jags -1, and a 6-point teaser for 2 units. That is my moneymaker. That is it for the episode, guys. Hope you guys enjoy week 5 preview. If you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening, you listen to us on any podcast platform. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at The Only Playbook. I'm Sweetheart. That's Shovit. Hope you guys enjoy your football. Have a great weekend.